Hi. Happy Wednesday. Not Overwatch Wednesday. Calm down, Raid. It's just a regular Wednesday. But I hope it's a good one so far for you. I'm excited because, as you know, there's nothing I like more than talking about the Steam controller. And Raid made a couple of good points. It's debatable whether any of this is really relevant, considering you can't even buy a Steam controller anymore. And people that have a Steam controller, at this point, probably already know how to use the damn thing. And people that don't have a Steam controller, well, I don't see what the point is in getting into all this. But here's the thing. Look, there's a possibility that there might be a Steam controller 2 coming down the road at some point. And if that happens, then maybe some of this will be relevant. You never know. Life's weird, man. And it's 2020 on planet Earth. Anything's possible. So today, I'm going to break down my desktop config. This has been many, many years in the making. I've been working on my desktop config for a long time. Since the Steam controller came out, really. In fact, I even won a contest once for my desktop config. And this is I would say a much improved and evolved version of that config. So if you've used Ryker's desktop config in the past, I'm sure you've undoubtedly made many, many tweaks to it to tailor it to your hands, your desktop experience. But I'm hopeful that maybe you'll see some of the new things and new changes and improvements that I've added, and it'll give you some ideas for how you can further tweak and customize your config. And hey, if you don't got a Steam controller, then maybe you might even learn a thing or two about general Windows navigation. I don't know, man. I'm looking for a silver lining for those of you that are probably going to be very bored by this long-winded explanation of things. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. Now, a little bit about the my use case, because really it depends on how you use a computer, right? And what kind of stuff you're doing. This is not meant to replace a mouse and keyboard for every situation. But there are a lot of situations where using a Steam controller in place of a mouse and keyboard can really, make things more fun. You notice I use that word a lot when I'm talking about the Steam controller, because it's really the reason I use it on the desktop is because it's fun. So I'm not arguing that the Steam controller is a more efficient way of navigating your desktop. But I will argue that it's a way more fun way of navigating your desktop. And for certain uses, it actually is better, faster, stronger, more handsome, possibly. Depends on your mouse and keyboard. I think the Steam controller's pretty weird looking, and I appreciate that. It's not without its shortcomings, for sure. We've talked about those many times. But what it does well, it does very well. And it does desktop stuff very well. It really does. Especially if you're a distance away from your computer. This is mostly for people who are using a Steam controller all the time and they don't want to have to set it down and grab the mouse and keyboard every time they want to navigate their PC. What happened to me was I was using the Steam controller in those kinds of situations, right? In between games, maybe installing video drivers or just doing some stuff that's not super like desktop PC sweaty, no like video editing and things like that, though we'll get into that a little later. video editing and sort of productivity kind of stuff. But I was a little annoyed because every time I would use it for just general stuff, right, in between games and in between things, I was getting kind of annoyed because there were certain things that were just sort of driving me crazy. And even though it worked for those, short little spurts of desktop navigation, it was still kind of annoying. And it was sort of like, I'm only doing this to get by, right? I'm only doing this because I'm too lazy to set it down and reach for my mouse. So that's when I decided to spend a week tweaking my config and seeing how we might be able to optimize it and improve its efficiency for my kind of desktop use. Most of which is on the internet, right? So there's some browser-based functions here. There's also some media functions. We have a lot of capability wrapped into this config, and it may even seem overwhelming at times. For me, I can kind of fly through it because most of these functions have been in place for a really long time, and so I've built up the muscle memory. I don't expect anyone to grab this config and then suddenly be amazing, because there's just going to be a lot to remember. And that's why I never like going to the Steam community and getting configs from there, because no matter how good they are, it's still going to take me longer to learn what they've done than it would take for me just to create my own custom config. And a lot of times, even if your custom config isn't as smart or clever or whatever as someone else's, you are going to be more efficient with it because you know where everything is. So there's going to be certain things here that are going to look pretty easy as I use it. And I don't want anyone to feel discouraged if they try to use this config and then feel like it's not making sense, and how do you find things and what do you do and all that stuff. So my point with this is not to say use my config and memorize where I have all of my functions and all my shortcuts. My purpose is to say, here's how I use the Steam controller on the desktop. There you go. And I will share the config. I will put a link to the config in the description of the video, as well as in our Steam controller channel on the Discord. So any of you with the Steam controller can feel free to check it out. In fact, if you have a Steam controller right now, you might want to follow along even. And if that's the case, I'll go ahead and post this config in the Discord, and you are very welcome to follow along with me as we go through this. So let me post this right now into the Steam controller channel. There. All right, so with that posted, let's just check this out. Now, this is the config. And this is Steam. You're probably familiar with Steam. We don't need to deal with that right now. So, it doesn't open up full screen. It's a little annoying. That's better. All right, so what are we looking at here? As a quick sort of run through of how this all works. If you're not familiar with the Steam controller configurator, action sets are up here, action layers are down here. Action sets are categories. It's not the right word. It'll work. Action layers are subcategories. There you go. So we only have one category, one action set. It's called default. I'm looking at the wrong camera. So the default action set contains 3 action layers, 3 subcategories, essentially. Right, app switcher, and left. And yeah, it's a little weird to have it laid out like this. but I can't move these things around. And once you make your layer, that's the first layer. And then any layers you make after that are going to follow. So initially I had left first and then right and then app switcher, but then I remade the left action layer, which then put it at the end. So that's what's going on with that. Now, if you notice our 3 action layers, now don't get into all this. All right, this is going to be overwhelming. Don't worry about all this stuff yet. Let's just look at these layers, because this is pretty integral to how my config works. Here, let me turn the music down a little just in case. I don't want it to be too loud. Okay, now, right is the right grip. Left is the left grip. Okay? Okay. So, now that we've got that sorted, app switcher, well, I'll show you what that's for in a little bit. But just understand this. Within each of these action layers, right? Layers. So our default layer is our base layer. Then we have right, which is another layer on top of that. When you make an action layer and you make changes to it, anything, any button, any function that doesn't get a specific keyboard function, mouse function, whatever it is assigned to it will, as you can see here, you see how it's almost grayed out. It says mouse. That's because this is carrying over. There's nothing assigned on right action layer to right touchpad. So it's going to use the functions of the layer beneath it, or the base layer, which in this case is default. So default, all of these functions stay present across these layers unless you change that function within that layer. Does that make sense? So, going through the default layer, here's how we have it set up. Right trigger is left mouse. Left mouse is the main mouse button that you use. That's your primary mouse button. That's why it's on the right trigger. We have it set up with a regular press, medium haptics. I like having the haptics on my triggers. Simple threshold, pull down that soft pull point. And there we go. That's our right trigger, left mouse button. Our left trigger, you guessed it, is our right mouse button. And now if you look at our settings over here, they're pretty much exactly the same. More or less. Interruptible, it could be off, it could be on. It really doesn't matter in this case because we don't have additional activators to make this function even relevant. So it doesn't matter. I do have haptics set to medium on this one as well because I do like my haptics on my triggers. Now, if you look up here, our right shoulder button, right alt, right arrow. That's forward. Our left shoulder button, right alt, left arrow. That's back. So basically, these 4 functions are like your standard mouse functions. Your clicks and your backward and forward buttons. Very simple. Ignore these grips for now. These grips bring you into their specific layers. As you can see the name here, apply action layer left, and then the remove action layer left function is on a release press. So we go into the action layer left by pulling this left grip. We leave action layer left by releasing left grip. Simple. Same thing with right action layer / right grip. Same thing. Into it with a pull, out of it with a release. We'll get into what the functions within those layers are in a little bit. Now, our scroll wheel is here, placed on our left touchpad. I increase the sensitivity quite a bit. No additional settings. And we'll get into mode shifts and all that stuff in a little bit. Now, you got to have your arrow keys, of course. The analog stick is great for that. So as you can see, we have our arrow keys. Up, down, left, right. And I've set these up in a way. You can notice regular press, left arrow, interruptible, off. This matters here because there's multiple activators. There's a regular press activator and there's a long press activator. The long press is also left arrow. Regular press, left arrow, long press, left arrow. But the long press has a turbo. The reason I did that and didn't put a turbo on the regular press is because that's annoying. You don't always want to be turboing through. Sometimes you just want to be able to tap that left arrow. And that's what this lets us do. And if we hold it for a little bit, not very long, shorter than the default, and that's something that you kind of adjust to taste, then we get our turbo essentially holding down that left arrow on a keyboard. You know, if your cursor was there, your cursor would just be moving all the way across. Same thing with all the other directions. Everything has a long press with a turbo to let you quickly navigate through things using your arrow keys. Now, we're going to skip over the face buttons for now and go directly into our touchpad mouse. On our right touchpad, we have it set for a mouse. I have acceleration set to medium. This is another taste thing, as well as is sensitivity. It also has to do with kind of what your resolution is on your desktop. So you would have to adjust your sensitivity for your preference anyway. So that's the first thing that I would do. If you're using a Steam controller right now and you're following along, that's one of the first things that you can do right there is adjust that sensitivity to make it feel good. Deciding what feels good is, it's debatable. And it depends on how you use your touchpad along with your mouse, or your gyro, I mean. So because we're using gyro mouse, we're using an always-on gyro mouse. Always on is a misnomer. I'll explain in a second. But we have trackball mode on over here. And that's kind of neat because I don't use trackball mode in games, but I do use it on the desktop. So as I flick my mouse, you can see my cursor. You see that? Here, let me... Oh, wrong one. I'll show you the controller here, and you can kind of see it. So as I flick my thumb, the cursor moves a little bit, right? That's that sort of trackball function. Now, my gyro is still always on. Well, always on. And as I flick, I can still control my gyro. And that's one of those things that feels extremely satisfying after a while, especially when you use it a lot and you get real good, at knowing it's hard to explain, but it's almost game-like, and it can be, because you can kind of like flick up to a thing and then use your gyro to sort of like help direct where you're going. So you could be like, oh, I want to get up to the corner, and you can flick up to the corner and then use your gyro to sort of like help over or help correct if you're going a little too far, too fast. So let me pull up that config again. So these are all things that are really up to preference. I can't really make a case for why one thing is better than the other if you wanted to change some of these. Rotation definitely is up to preference because I was very frustrated with using the touchpad as a mouse until I realized that if I just increase that rotation and I just change that angle, the horizontal angle, from like this to like this, then it's much more comfortable for my thumb because my thumb is moving more diagonal up than it is straight horizontally, Because when you think about it, if you're holding a controller and your thumb has to move horizontal, you're having to adjust that joint and that joint. You're having to do multiple things to keep that thumb moving perfectly horizontal. Whereas if you're just moving it diagonally, you're really only moving one thing. It's really up to one joint. So that's kind of how you've heard me say so many times that it's all up to your thumbs, right? So, and I'm so glad that they add functions like this, settings like this, to let you fine tune it. Because at first you might think, oh, I don't need to mess with that. It is what it is. My muscle memory will build based on whatever it is. And that is true to an extent, but you can help yourself along by sort of accommodating the way your fingers work. So I would definitely give that a try, especially if you're realizing that your horizontal swipes are kind of going off in the wrong direction, then you might want to adjust your rotation. Something to be aware of. Now, depending on how you use your mouse with your touchpad with your gyro, you may like your gyro to be very, very low sensitivity and use your touchpad for your more like sweeping movements and your fast movements. So you may set it up the sensitivity so that one swipe will go all the way across your desktop. And if you have multiple monitors, then you may even want to increase that sensitivity more. Or maybe not. Maybe you're someone that would rather use a high sensitivity gyro, low sensitivity trackpad. That's certainly not me, but I won't knock you if you want to experiment with that. You might find something you like. So moving on to the face buttons now. Y is empty. And I have that set up to an empty binding so that I don't forget that Y needs to stay empty. And the reason Y needs to stay empty is because if you look in our gyro, the Y button is our gyro enable button. And our gyro button behavior is to not actually enable it, but to disable it. Meaning when I press Y, the cursor stops moving. That's super important. It's extremely important. When I first started using always on gyro, I had a hard time with it. And I even recently, found another video on YouTube of a very, very skilled individual using a Steam controller and talking about why they dislike always on gyro. And their opinion was the same as mine before. They were saying it's very unwieldy and you end up in awkward positions and it's hard to correct. And that is all very true until you set up a button to disable your gyro. Many of your problems just disappear once you do that, and you spend a week getting used to it. I mean, maybe it'll take you more than a week. It took me more than a week, really. And I think I'm still getting used to it, honestly. But I use it all the time, and it's elevated my experience tremendously. So I carry that over from my gaming now to also my desktop config. Of course, in my case, I end up losing a face button because I'm dedicating that face button to disabling the gyro. It's not that big of a deal for me though, because I was rarely using face buttons before. I wasn't a big fan of using the face buttons because my gyro was set to activate on right touchpad touch. And because of that, my thumb basically lived on the right touchpad. And since my thumb lived there, I didn't really use a lot of other stuff. I wanted to just keep my thumb there. My thumb was happy there. I wanted to leave it there. I would put things under a mode shift if I wanted to access other functions. But now that I'm using this always on gyro, I'm able to use that Y button to stop things, but I'm also now able to gain the functionality of X, B, and A, which I wasn't really using before. I mean, I was, but I wasn't relying on them. I would map things to it just out of necessity or something like that. So this is actually very, very nice. And if you use your face buttons a lot, you may have a problem with kind of sacrificing a face button in the name of, I don't know, more efficient gyro function, but I'm all about that gyro, so I don't mind. Now, B, we'll get into X in a second, because X is how we activate the app switcher action layer. B is escape. Long press B is Alt F4. And if you're on a Windows computer, Alt F4 essentially closes whatever is running. Escape will often close whatever is running, but not always. A lot of time, I mean, you don't need me to explain what escape does, but you can hit B to escape, you can hold B to Alt F4. This is a function I love, and this is one of those things that you're not really going to get on a mouse unless you have a mouse with multiple buttons and you map this function to that mouse, which is something I love doing. I love getting an MMO mouse and then mapping all sorts of stuff to those buttons. And then using auto hotkey as a Steam controller configurator. But these days I can just do this and it's way more fun. So I love having that there because I find myself constantly closing things with Alt F4. Especially now, especially using a Steam controller. It's a really convenient thing. And A is enter. It just makes a lot of sense. And of course, you can hold enter, turns on the turbo, just like with our arrow keys. So you can enter down if you're in a document or something, or you just need to rapidly press a button in a message box or something. And then we have another function over here, a mode shift. We're not going to get into this mode shift today because this mode shift is really kind of irrelevant. We're not going to get into that. Don't look in there. Don't do it. It's not important. And X, on a start press, it applies our action layer app switcher. Okay? Now let me show you how that works, because it's one of the coolest things, and it's one of those things that, again, increases the capabilities of a Steam controller over a mouse fairly substantially. Not that you couldn't map these things to a mouse button, like I was saying, if you wanted to, but as we continue, you're going to realize that you would be running out of mouse buttons fairly quickly. So, mode shift deserves its own damn video. Yeah, well, maybe it'll get one. Don't tempt me. So, I'm going to hit X. And here, let me change this view so you can kind of see what's going on. So, I'm going to press X, and as I'm holding X, it pulls up my Alt-Tab menu. Simple, right? You can use the joystick in this layer to go through your open apps. You release X, and it opens that app. Very simple. You can tap it to just go back and forth. So nice. So let's do something like this. I'm going to pop these tabs out. So now we have a number of windows open. So now when we hit X, you see quite a bit more. And of course, you can arrow up and down, left and right. You can get to what you want to get to pretty quickly. But wait, there's more. If you're holding this down, the left touchpad turns into a horizontal scroll wheel. And by sliding your thumb across, you can go through all your apps, your open apps. You can flick, you can move slowly. If you want to go one by one, you can go quickly. It's extremely responsive. It's really nice. Really nice. So, that is one of those features that I use all of the time. I use it so much. I use it more than I even used Alt-Tab before. So instead of just going down and clicking something on the taskbar, which may, for me was a habit for a long time, just to go down and click on what I wanted. And now I'm getting to stuff way faster by opening it here. And it's not that I didn't use Alt-Tab before. Of course I did like crazy. But now the whole experience of Alt-Tab is way more fun. It's way more, I don't know, just interesting and satisfying. And then the fact that you still have that joystick that you can use if you want to get to things quickly is kind of cool. You see that? So, and this is one of those things where like muscle memory comes into play, because after a while, I mean, when you first start using it, you're going to think, oh, okay, well, this is a little weird. I don't really know how far to throw my thumb across that touchpad to get to where I want to go. And again, this is where customizing things to your fingers comes into play. So let's take a look at the app switcher layer real quick. Now, if you're in here, you can see left touchpad is a scroll wheel. it's just left and right arrow. And the reason for that is because the X button, remember, we're holding down the X button to access this layer. And when we're in this layer, the X button that we're already holding down becomes tab. But it's a start press. So it just fires tab once. Tab. And then left alt. And then when we release this button, it removes the application or the action layer. And we get out of the app switcher layer seamlessly. We don't think about it. You don't have to think, how do I leave the layer? How do I get out? It's just going to happen. X is alt tab. Think of it like that. Hold it down to scroll through, or just tap it to switch between your apps. And it just works. You can dig into these things and see how I set them up. And of course, if you have any questions, shoot your questions into the Steam Controller channel and let me know. If you have any questions right now during the live stream, by all means, leave a comment in the Tricom channel. All right, so now if you look up here, we have changed our grips. We have changed our shoulder buttons. We have changed our triggers, soft pull, and full pull. And as you can see, they're all left arrows on the left side and they're all right arrows on the right side. Meaning that these are not going to be mouse clicks. Not when we're in this layer. So let me show you what that means. When we pull this up and we're in that layer, here's what I can do. I can just pull either my trigger, my left trigger, or my right trigger to move through apps. And if I full pull, it'll move twice. So I can go full pull and then single, or full pull and then soft pull. If I want to go real fast and then real slow. If I want to move quickly, I can just do a lot of full pulls. And then I can also do the same thing with the grip buttons. So right grip to go to the right, left grip to go to the left. Same thing with the bumpers. And the reason I set it up this way was because at the time I just wasn't sure how I wanted it to be set up. I wasn't sure if I would rather move around with the joystick, with the horizontal scrolling on the touchpad, with the triggers, bumpers, or grips. So I just decided to make everything scrolling and ended up using the touchpad, the horizontal scroll wheel of the touchpad, way more. So that turned out to be what my hands prefer. I will use the triggers from time to time when I'm not thinking about it. Sometimes it'll just go trigger. My hands will just do it. It'll go X, trigger, you know, and I don't know why. So I haven't changed it. And because this is one of the benefits to action layers, because all these functions here are contained within this action layer, I can keep these here. I don't have to worry that this is going to gum up some other function, because this is all stuck inside of this layer. It's not going to affect this layer. It's not going to affect this layer. And it's not going to affect our default base layer. It's only going to affect this layer. And this layer is only going to be active when I'm holding the X button. Really, really nice. Now, we need to go. Oh, you know what? I haven't done this yet. So, start is show keyboard. The keyboard on the Steam controller is it's kind of cool. If we go, let me screw up. This is a document of how do I explain it? Where I'm from, we have all these stories and stuff, you know, and most of them are not real, I don't think, but many of them are, I think. I don't know. But the purpose of the stories, right, is like inspiration and motivation. They tell you these stories as almost like almost how you have like myths and legends on Earth, right? And then some people create, entire communities around these concepts. Well, I was raised learning about these certain stories and these people and these characters. There's debate whether or not these people are real, but that doesn't matter because that's not the point. The point is, these are some pretty fascinating characters that have been just passed down, and their stories and their antics and adventures are very sort of inspirational, regardless of whether they're real or not. And this is not something I'd be able to officially like share. I don't have like any documents, right? When I came here, it was on a short-term mission, and I didn't bring a friggin' data gem filled with all this stuff. So I'm sort of recreating it from memory, but that's actually better because if I already got in trouble enough with the Fed, and I certainly wouldn't want to burn the Triforce. So what I wanted to do was share some of these stories with you guys, and so I just started writing them out from memory. And there's no way that I'm going to remember these stories correctly, which is great, which actually works out better and makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about sharing these stories with you guys because of that. Because I know that I'm going to get a lot of the facts wrong, and the purpose of these stories is not historical accuracy, because the historical, authenticity of this stuff anyway is up for debate. So I've been kind of like working on this stuff for the last couple of years, putting these stories together from memory, and I'll eventually share them with you guys. I'm really excited to, because these are like some stories that really mean a lot to me, and this one in particular is really important. And it's part of the reason why I became a member of the Terrestrial Reconnaissance and Intervention Force to begin with. So I really want to show you guys, or at least share with you guys, some of these stories that are extremely relevant to me, but I want to get them right. And even though I'm not going to be able to get them exactly right because it's off of memory, and I don't have a lot of resources I can go to learn a lot of this stuff and get refreshed. So, and I'm changing a lot of the names. Obviously, all of these broadcasts are planet side, right? So nothing is going off planet. Nothing could potentially get to the grid and get intercepted and be, a security issue or anything like that. So it's kind of nice that, all the names and the locations are sort of changed, but I'm trying to keep like the spirit and the message of these things, the same as it was when I was growing up. And so I'm excited to share some of this stuff with you guys, but it kind of works right here because I can use this to show off some of the functions of the controller. So holding down, actually here, let me show you. So holding down A, right, is enter, and you can see it's doing its thing. Holding down A, enter. If I just tap it, it just taps. Right? So now let's go back over here real quick. I'm kind of all over the place, but keyboard, that's what I was going to show you. So if I hit start, it'll pull up the on-screen keyboard, and you use this with your thumbs. And I'll tell you, this is not as difficult to use as you think, but it is challenging. It is definitely challenging to learn. And one of the things, this is super weird, one of the things that kind of helps the keyboard more than anything else is putting like those soft cloth band-aids. Like you cut off like the pad part, and you just take the sticky part of like the cloth ones and you put it on your thumbs. And then when your thumbs have those on them, they don't stick at all to the touchpads. They glide across them very, very smoothly. And it makes it really easy to sort of like build that muscle memory and start typing like crazy. So I have done all sorts of things to the Steam keyboard. Now, yeah, no, not great, but it gets you by, right? You're not gonna write a friggin' blog or something, but you might respond to a message on Discord like this, or enter some text in a game like this, and it works out. The way I have this actually set up at the moment is if I release my left thumb, then I can control the cursor. See, I can control the cursor, I can make a selection, and as soon as I put my left thumb back on, then the keyboard is activated again. The mouse cursor stops moving, the gyro stops going, and I can just use it. Also, the dual stage triggers make this amazing. They really do. So if you customize your big screen config, you can do some really neat stuff to the keyboard. I have it set up so it fires the key, right? It presses the key on a soft pull, and then on a full pull, it'll do, oh, here, let's go this, and when I hit this, I'm gonna hit the S with a full pull. You see that? It did S plus space. So essentially, I was just trying to replicate some of the kind of general functionality that you get on a smartphone keyboard. So, and then if you click the touchpads, if you click up, it'll give you an apostrophe. If you click left, it'll give you an exclamation mark. You click the left touchpad to the right, and it gives you a question mark. And you can click the right touchpad to the right, and it gives you a forward slash, and then backslash if you do the left one. So there's all sorts of neat little functions that you can do. This is really pretty irrelevant to what we're working on today, though, because that's a totally separate config than what we're working with. So we're not going to get too much into the keyboard, but that's what that button does. Start button, show keyboard. So here's where we're at. Our default base layer has got some pretty general functions. It's got most of the stuff that you would need for general navigation. And it's got all of your mouse functions and things like that. It's got a gyro mouse, and it's got your touchpad mouse. Things are dialed in really well, and it's great. Now, if you use a computer like me, though, there's a lot of other things that you want to be able to do and you want to have access to. I love keyboard shortcuts. I'm a keyboard shortcut fan, putting it lightly. I like keyboard shortcuts, and I use them all the time. So to use a Steam controller as just a mouse is not nearly functional enough. If I have both hands on this controller, then that means I don't have a hand on the keyboard. And if I don't have a hand on the keyboard, well, there's a tremendous amount of functions that I don't have access to. So I try to recreate many of those functions here in the config using action layers. And that's where right and left action layer comes in. We're going to first jump into the right action layer. Now, right is kind of like application functions, if you will, whereas left is more system functions. So, in fact, let's start with left. I think this will be better. So if you look left, we're inside of the left action layer. Many things are not changed, right? Like show keyboard is not changed. Right touchpad is not changed. Same thing with the gyro. Same thing with the left bumper. But everything else, as you can see, has been changed. And starting with the triggers. Now, normally, right, our right trigger is our left mouse button. But if you look over here, there's two activators now. Left mouse, as well as left mouse. What's this? Well, I will show you. Look at this. Now look at this. Seriously, look at it. This is awesome. When you're selecting stuff, you're going through and you're trying to select a word. Oh, I got a space. Oh no. Oh, no. Right here. Oh, right there. Okay, there. All right, cool. Got it. Got that word. Now I can copy it and paste it and do whatever. Or I can move it around, whatever I want. It can be a little annoying, especially if you're new to using a gyro. Really, all this kind of selection, precise selections and stuff, is really where you want to use that gyro more than the touchpad. It's just much more precise. And also, this is where having that acceleration comes in really handy, because you can do sort of more precise movements with greater accuracy. But what if I told you there was a way to select one word at a time? Well, using a mouse, you can simply double click on a word to select that whole word. But you have to not move the mouse at all for it to work. And when you have an always-on gyro, that's a little tough. What you could do is hold Y and then double click to make your selection. But what if there was a better way? And this is where the action layers come in. When I hold right grip, actually, no, it's left grip. We're doing left. When I hold left grip and then I click a word, using the same soft pull on the same right trigger, watch what happens. Boom. Oh, no, header. Look at that. I'm able to select the entire word extremely easily. I don't have to double click anything. This is a game changer because normally you have to double click and you think about selecting a word and you think double click it. Well, now you don't think that, or I don't think that. I think left grip, click. Boom, 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 boom. It is so nice. And now, because of this, what else can you use a very, very responsive and reliable double click for? That's right. General file navigation. So if I want to open a folder, I can go left grip, soft pull, right trigger, and it goes right into that folder. If I want to open a file, instead of double clicking, I left grip, single click, and it opens it right up. And it is extremely reliable. It works every time. Now, I am sort of getting ahead of myself because anyone who's used a Steam controller and even a trackpad, maybe, well, maybe not as much a trackpad, but certain mice, and even if you're new to a mouse, you've probably experienced this before, where you're trying to click on something, but you're accidentally moving the mouse when you click, and you end up, dragging something rather than just simply selecting it. Or if you're double clicking, like if you double click something while your mouse is moving, it won't work, or things might be weird. The solution to that, and one of the game changers, absolute game changer, and this is something that I say is the absolute most important thing for you to do to your Steam controller desktop config. And I should have mentioned this earlier when we were going in the gyro, but here's what it is. This is super important. You go to additional settings for your gyro on your base layer, your default layer, additional settings, and then right here, both trigger soft pull dampening, increase it 100%. And what that does is when either one of your triggers, left or right, engages in a soft pull, it will completely kill your gyro for the amount of time that you are soft pulled on that trigger. Meaning, watch my mouse move. I'm going to be moving my hands, and then I'm going to soft pull on that trigger, and you're going to notice that mouse just stops. I'm going to release, it goes, I'm going to press, it stops. You see that? That makes it extremely accurate. It makes it extremely easy to single click on things, because every time you go to engage in a single click, your gyro stops. So you're not going like this, like when you're trying to click on something, wiggling around and, oh no, I just moved something to the wrong folder, or, that kind of thing happens all the time. Not anymore though. It's phenomenal. And I would say this is game changer. This is one of the things that made my Steam controller desktop experience go from frustrating, but better than having to get up and grab a mouse, to being extremely fun and rewarding. Rewarding. What a strange word to use. But it is. What can I say? These kinds of things, they make me happy. Now, it's the same thing when you do left grip, right trigger to double click. I'm going to do it right now. I'm holding left grip, and I'm going to soft pull right trigger, and watch that cursor. It double clicked, but the cursor stopped moving. In this application, a double click will zoom in to full resolution, I believe. So that's why that's happening. But essentially, it's the same as that single click where it freezes your gyro to make your click really, really accurate, except with a double click. So if I wanted to just quickly go and open up a bunch of these, you know, it's extremely easy to do. So that's one of those things I would definitely recommend that you adjust. And if you're thinking, well, hold on a second. What if you want to drag something? How do you drag something? Because if you're freezing the gyro, does that mean you can't drag something once you click on it? No way, because check this out. The way we had it set up, remember, was both trigger soft pull dampening, not both trigger soft/full, but only soft. That means it's only going to apply that dampening. It's only going to kill the gyro when you soft pull. When you full pull, it will maintain the mouse button held, but it will reactivate your gyro. So you can easily make a selection and then drag your selection anywhere. These are the kinds of things that I think drive people crazy when trying to use something like a Steam controller. And solutions like this make all the difference in the world. So if you've hated using a Steam controller for desktop navigation, I suggest you go into your config and you experiment with killing your gyro whenever you hit that mouse button, because it's really, really handy. Over here on left, it's the same thing. We haven't made adjustments to this, so it still carries over the underlying functions. Both triggers, soft pull, dampening all the way up. We're not changing any of that stuff. And there it is. So now when we go to open it, double click, it just does it. It just friggin' works. Now, you just saw I closed this by hitting the X. Of course, I can hit B to escape, but in this program, B does not close the program. So if I hold B, boom, Alt F4, it closes it right up for me. So I can go here, hold B, hold B, hold B, close out really quickly. It's extremely responsive. Now, you'll notice over here, the right shoulder button within the left action layer is also left mouse. But look at this. It's a triple. It's a triple. Now, what would you do with 3 simultaneous mouse clicks? Well, not a lot, unless you're dealing with text. So check this out. When I hold left grip and I pull the right trigger, it selects words, right? I can select words and I can move them. I could, do whatever you want. You can select the words. When I hit instead of the trigger, but I hit the shoulder button, watch this. It selects the entire paragraph. And it does it extremely reliably. So you can select a word, you can select a paragraph, and it just works. So, getting back into here, let's look at the left trigger within the left action layer. Middle mouse button. Middle mouse button is very important for a lot of things. One of which is opening up links in other tabs. So watch this. If I go over here, if I go to like songs, and then I go right trigger, just normal base layer, right trigger, it opens up that link, just as you would expect. But if I go in here, and then I go left grip, left trigger, it opens it up in an additional tab. And I can do that with all sorts of things to quickly have things open up. I mean, if you're on a page and you want to read multiple things, you can just go like this and you can open them all up in additional tabs to get to them. You can also, I don't know if you know this is a nice function in Chrome and probably many other browsers, Firefox as well. If you mouse wheel, middle mouse button on the tab, it'll close the tab. See that? So it's really nice. Now, this function here on the left grip removes the left action layer. This is a bit redundant because we have this already over here, but it's just in case. You know, sometimes it doesn't leave the action layer, you know, right away, or it doesn't leave the action layer at all if you fire into it and then out of it really quickly. So I found that putting this here helps increase that reliability of leaving the action layer. It may not be necessary, but it's a carryover from many years ago. And perhaps I don't even need to do that anymore. They've made a ton of updates to this controller and the software and stuff like that over the years, so I might not even need that. But I'm going to keep it just in case because it doesn't bother me being there. Within this left action layer, in addition to having those modified mouse click functions, the double click, the triple click, and the mouse wheel, we also have our volume control. So I hold left grip, and now the scroll wheel on the left touchpad becomes a volume slider, volume wheel. So look in the top left corner of that screen, you can see my volume indicator going up and down as I scroll my thumb. Now, depending on how you handle your volume, you may want to increase that sensitivity. So maybe one full swipe will completely mute it. Or maybe you want it slower so that you can more gradually adjust it. That's all up to you. I kind of like it how it is right now, so we'll keep it there. Now, over here, this is a little different. These functions may not really be useful by a lot of people. They're not particularly useful for me. They were at one point in time. I used them all the time. And I still may in the future, so I'm keeping it here, and I don't really have anything better to put here. The nice thing about having action layers is you have almost an unlimited amount of possibilities. You have almost an unlimited number of buttons because you can create more action layers if you needed them. Because of that, I don't really feel an urgency to put anything else over here, so I haven't done that. But let me show you what this does. So when you're within the left action layer and you use the analog stick, if I go left grip, up, it creates a new desktop. This is a Windows 10 feature. It may have been in older versions of Windows, I'm not sure. And then when I squeeze left grip and go left, it goes back to the previous desktop. When I go to the right, it goes to the other desktop. I can go down, and it closes the desktop, but I just accidentally closed the wrong desktop. Not a big deal. Oh my gosh. And now my computer is freezing. That's unfortunate. Oh, we're back. Oh, good. All right, that wasn't a Steam controller thing. That was a Ryker's computer thing. We'll just blame it on Raid. He's supposed to maintain this stuff. All right, so jumping back into this. So that's basically what's going on here. When you go up, it creates a new desktop. When you go down, it closes the desktop. When you go left and right, it cycles between your desktops. Not the most universally functional thing or useful thing, I don't think. I'm actually going to put that on crossgate because I don't need diagonals in there. All right, now moving on to the face buttons. These are much more functional and useful. So Y, F5, refresh. So that's very useful. So left grip, Y, refresh your page. Very nice. You know what that's all about. And then over here, we've got X is Win key X. That pulls up this little menu down here. I don't know if you guys know about this. If you right click on your start menu or left trigger in this case, it pulls up this little menu here, and there's useful things here. This is usually how I shut down my computer and all that. You don't really have to do that, obviously, but I don't know. I use this for a lot of stuff. So that's just kind of nice having that there. And because we have enter right here on our A button, and we have up, down, left, right, we have our arrow keys assigned to our joystick here. We can do that. And then without having to bring our mouse over there, we can just navigate down that list or up the list using our joystick. And then we can make our selection using A. I just held B to close that window. So that's what's going on with X over here. B is, as you can see, Control-Shift-Escape. This brings up your task manager. So left grip B. Hello? It's not doing it now. Oh, there. Left grip B brings up the task manager. Sometimes, FYI, if you're in an action layer and then you switch into the Steam configurator while you're still in that layer, then when you leave the configurator, you might still be in that action layer that you were in when you went into the configurator. Does that make sense? So be mindful. Sometimes that happens. It's not really a problem. It's a thing, and you're not going to experience it very, very much, honestly. Unless you spend a ton of time inside of this configurator going back and forth within different action layers. I don't do that. I don't think that you would. But anyway, it's something to be mindful of. Easy fix, though. Just hop back in here, hop out, disable the layer with whatever button it is that activates it, / disables it. So that's what's going on here. Now I want to go into a mode shift. Let's look into the mode shift for the volume wheel, which is our left touchpad when we're in the left action layer. Now in here, we have a mode shift. The mode shift is on left pad click. This is the left pad. So it's our volume wheel, right? And when we click it in, it's going to do different functions. And the different functions are based on which quadrant we're clicking. If we click to the left side of the trackpad, it's going to play our previous song. So if we had a media player going right now, it would rewind our song, go to the previous track. If we click it on the right side, it'll go to the next track. And if we click it up, then it will play / pause. If we click down, it will mute, which is kind of nice. So you have your volume, right? But then if you just click it down, it mutes your volume. Adjust your volume, mute your volume. Super, super cool. And that's what's going on here on the left action layer. Now let's go to the right action layer. Looking in the right action layer, you're going to see a lot of familiar functions. We've got copy and paste. We've got undo. We've got redo. We've got paste. I meant copy and cut. And then we have paste over here on the left trigger. Select all on our Y button. Delete. Here, check this out. So our delete on our face button. When you hold delete, it does the same sort of turbo function that our arrows do. So if you wanted to hold the delete button to delete a lot of things, you can do that. And then there's a chorded press, which will do a shift delete, which is a permanent delete. You don't want to fire this accidentally because it skips your recycle bin. You could lose an important file if you're not paying attention. So the way that you get into this is by pressing the left grip while you're in the right grip action layer. Sounds complicated. It's not. So if we go and we pull up, let's go to a file. All right, we'll select this and we'll delete this right now, right? So if I go right and then I hit X, it deletes it. But it actually just threw it in the recycle bin. Let's restore it. Now, if I want to permanently delete it, I do delete, which is right grip X. But before I do that, I hold left grip as well. Now it's right grip, left grip X. And it says, hey, are you sure you want to permanently delete this file? Yeah. There's no undoing that. So that's a really handy function for those of you that use shift delete often. And it's not something that you're really going to accidentally do unless you're a dingus and you just like press all sorts of buttons all the time, being crazy. But again, I mean, if you did that with a keyboard, you'd be in trouble too. So don't do that. Be a little mindful, and you'll be all right. Now, when we're in write, X is delete, which kind of makes sense, right? Because it's like delete X, dead, X, excommunicated, get rid of them, delete them. And then B is backspace. And B also has a long press, which is a turbo. So just like the delete, just like the arrow keys, you can backspace many times by holding the button down. A is space. So right grip A, space, regular A, enter. Cool, right? And we already talked about Y being select all. I think we did. So yeah, right grip, Y, select all. Piece of cake. And remember, left grip Y is refresh. Right grip Y, select all. And so the reason, I figure, when you're cutting and copying, having access to select all is kind of valuable. You might do a select all and then a copy, right? Or a select all and then a paste to change something. So that's extremely good to have in this layer. When I was first setting this up, I had select all in the left layer and it worked, but then it was weird going like left, Y, select all, right, copy, paste, whatever it is. So having it all within the right layer makes a lot more sense. So that's what's going on here. There's no mode shift or anything happening in here. It's all very simple. And then over here, our joystick, our analog stick, becomes page up, page down, home, and end. This is super functional. So I can easily go down to the bottom of this list super fast. Then I can go up to the top of it, folder. So I can go to the top of the folder, bottom of the folder really fast by going right grip, left to go to the bottom, still holding right grip. I can go left. I meant right. So right grip right takes you to the bottom of your folder. Right grip left takes you to the top. And this is just your basic home and end functionality. And then up and down, when you're holding that right grip, is your page up and your page down. And this can be really handy when you're dealing with like a website that has a lot of stuff on it, like a long page. Something like, let's see. Oh, I don't even remember where that was at. I'm going to have to show you some of these things right now because I've got some cool functions for navigating Chrome and web browsers in general that we'll get into in just a minute. So that's really handy having these here. That was another sort of game changer. I won't often use page up and page down on the desktop outside of a couple of specific use cases, but having it here and available at just within that layer, that right grip layer, is so convenient that I find myself using it way more often than I would before. And it kind of creates opportunities for new ways of navigating your computer. Now over here, this is what we kind of talked about earlier with our right grip app. Oh, no. That's the app switcher. I'm not ready to talk to you guys about this yet. Not yet. Almost. Not yet. It's super, super cool, but not yet. So we're gonna skip that for a second. Everything else within this layer is normal, basic. There's no changes to the gyro. There's no changes to the touchpad. So then if we go back into the default layer, we're gonna jump into the mode shift on this left touchpad. It's our scroll wheel. It's a circular scroll wheel. So unlike the app switcher scroll wheel, which is a horizontal scroll wheel, this one is circular so that you can just keep rotating your thumb in a circle around that pad and do what you need to do. when you click it, these functions, it's similar to what I showed you before inside of here with the volume and the mode shift, left pad click going play, previous, next, and mute. Same thing, same sort of concept happening over here. It's a mode shift with a left pad click to activate. It goes into a D-pad where left is left shift, left control T, right is left control N, up is left control T, and down is control W. And if you spend a lot of time in a web browser like I do, you might already know what those functions do, but let me show you real quick. So we're in a web browser, right? If I want to open a new tab, I click my scroll wheel, right? This is my scroll wheel. I'm just going to click it in the upper quadrant. Click it in, it opens a new tab. Every time you click it in, it opens a new tab. And now, if I want to close the current tab that I'm on, I click down, and it closes that current tab. Let's close all these tabs. Oh no, I didn't want to close that one. How do I reopen it? Easy. You want to go back to that tab you just closed? Well, click to the left on your scroll wheel touchpad, and it will open the previously closed tab. You see this? I'm opening all the tabs I just closed, and I can close them again, and then I could open them again, and I could close them again, and I could open them again, and then I could make some selections, right? Oh, I can select some words. I can select the entire row. Phenomenal. Phenomenal stuff. All right. What else? I think that's going to be all for that. Now, the last thing I want to show you is the left touchpad inside of that right layer. You see what we got here? Left control tab and left control shift tab. Don't worry about the mode shift. We'll talk about that in a second. So watch this. These functions are how you navigate through your tabs. Notice it's set to a horizontal swipe direction. So when we're in right layer and we slide our thumb across that touchpad horizontally, watch what happens in Chrome. I hold the right grip. I slide my thumb. When we are cycling through our open tabs, it is extremely convenient to go through your tabs this way. I mean, I'm not saying that this is better than hitting a keyboard and going control, tab, 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 control, shift, tab, tab, tab. Obviously, you can do this on a keyboard very easily. The point isn't to say that this replaces or is better than a keyboard. The point is to say, hey, look at this awesome keyboard functionality that you know and love, and check out how you can access it now on this controller. So you can just swipe through things. Naturally, you want to adjust the sensitivity so that a little swipe doesn't cycle through 5 different tabs, or else that would be really annoying when you're trying to get pretty specific. So the mode shift here is essentially the same thing, except it's a click. Let's say you don't want to slide. Let's say you just want to go one tab over, left or right, and you don't want to have to slide your thumb for whatever reason. Even if you have, your sensitivity set up really well and it works, just for whatever reason you don't want to. You don't have to. And here's how this works. It's on a left pad click. So if we go here, let me open up. Let's go here and we'll go here, here. All right, so I can slide my thumb, right, to cycle through these tabs. Or I can just click. So again, this is all within the right layer, the right action layer. So I'm holding the right grip and I'm going to click on the left side. And it's cycling one at a time. Click on the right, it cycles to the right. Click on the left, cycles to the left. If you click up, it cycles to the left. If you click down, it cycles to the right. Whatever you prefer. Essentially, this whole quadrant here will cycle back, and this whole quadrant here will cycle forward. It's very reliable. It's one of those things that quickly turns into muscle memory. And you kind of find your own preferred way of sort of navigating your tabs. And sometimes you'll find yourself swiping if you're trying to get kind of, if you've got a ways to go. You might swipe a lot to get to where you want and then click to take you over one more, right? So you might go all the way down like that and then click to go one more over. But the point is, you have options. You don't just have to do it one way. You can do it multiple ways, and you can dial in these things to make it really comfortable for your hands. All right, what else do we got here? Copy and cut. We have this set up in a really neat way. This is a cool demonstration of how awesome dual stage triggers are. So on a soft pull, we copy. On a full pull, we cut. And now here's why it's set up this way. So let's say you're in your file system and you want to cut this, or you want to copy it. Right grip, soft pull your right trigger, and now you've copied it. And now I can right grip and then soft pull my left trigger to paste it. So now I've got two copies of this. I can do it again, and since I still have it in the clipboard, I can just paste another and paste another and paste another. And now we have a whole bunch of angry little Ewoks hunting those dirty stormtroopers. As you can see. Isn't he adorable? Just look at him. So great. All right, so very nice, right? Now, if you're gonna cut, you can just full pull. Instead of doing a soft pull to copy, do a full pull. And now we've cut it. It's that simple. And because we're going through the soft pull, what's actually happening is as we soft pull, it goes copy, and then as we continue and go to a full pull, it goes cut. That way you can easily just do a copy and then a cut. Copy, cut. Or cut, 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 cut. Look at that. Cut it out, man. It's so sweet. Now, over here, we have paste on a soft pull, left trigger within the right action layer. Nothing special. Paste is paste. Paste is paste. Undo and redo are within the right action layer as well. It felt appropriate to have undo and redo in the same place where I have delete, backspace, select all, copy, paste. Having undo and redo within that same layer makes a lot of sense for my hands. And as you can see, things like page up, things like selecting all, deleting backspace, copy, paste, undo, redo, these are all sort of general system functions. And in the left mode, these are more, I don't know, mouse function. I don't know. It's one thing to try and come up with a methodology for why you're putting certain functions inside of an action layer. But then when it comes to actually putting it to practice, your hands are going to do different things. And you're just simply going to find that, hey, just like I did with select all, you're going to find that, hey, select all needs to be available when I'm in the layer where I can copy and paste, because then I don't have to release a grip button to select all and copy. So be willing to move things around into different action layers, even on the same buttons, because it might be more synergistic with other functions that exist within that layer already. So that function, left control A, select all, is way more appropriate to be here in this layer next to things like undo, redo, cut, copy, paste than it is over here in the left layer where we have double click, triple click, middle mouse, things like that. There's no mode shift here. I mean, that's pretty much it. Now, before my old config, it had quite a few more action layers going on because at the time I wasn't using corded presses. There were more action layers needed to achieve similar functionality. I've gotten rid of a lot of action layers that I don't need anymore. And it's kind of nice having it a little more streamlined. There was something that was really handy though. I had a one-handed mouse and it was a completely separate action set. Actually, it was for a while, and then I think I turned it into an action layer because, actually, I can't even remember now. I used it for a while, and it was really nice because what I was trying to do is, I mean, I'm sure you can come up with a number of scenarios where it would be nice to have a one-handed mouse function, especially when you've got a gyro and you're doing desktop navigation. And what you end up having to do is you have to think about all of the functions that are on the one side of the mouse that you can't access, and how can you put those on the right side? Because I didn't really fully embrace corded presses back when I first made my config a long time ago, I was a little more hampered by things. And the reason I've removed that is because it's not a good demonstration of what a one-handed mode could be. And I've got much better ideas for a one-handed mode. And I'm going to be making that in the next, I don't know, maybe by the end of this month. This is July. So hopefully by the end of the month, this config will be updated with a one-handed mode. And I can already tell you that that one-handed mode is essentially going to be, there's going to be a lot of chord presses. And it's going to use these face buttons. So, and what I will end up doing is duplicating all of the functions. Duplicating all the functions that I will have on the right side of the controller from here using face buttons, trackpad, grip, and triggers and bumpers. Trigger and bumper. And I'm going to duplicate those on the left side. So the joystick here will essentially be the same layout as what the touchpad is. Same thing with the right touchpad, or the face buttons, I should say. So the same thing with the right touchpad being a mouse, the left touchpad will also be a mouse. Everything will be duplicated. It'll be mirrored so that if you're left-handed, you can use the left-handed mode, one-handed mode in your left hand, and if you're right-handed, you can use it in your right hand. And one of the neat things about this is, depending on how you use it and what you're using it for, you can do gyro, all of these neat functions with your right hand, and your left hand could be on the keyboard doing certain functions. And this has proven to be really, really nice with video editing. And so when I had that one-handed layer, I was still using my keyboard for my video editor keyboard shortcuts. But I really liked using the gyro and having, you know, all of the different functions that I had at the time available in such a fun sort of package here. So I haven't used it in a while, and it didn't feel very well representative of the state of things, the state of what the Steam controller is capable of. So I've removed it for now, but it will be there later. And that's pretty much it. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is, if you do set this up and you do use this, but you also use other applications that I don't use, feel free to create action layers for those applications specifically. And then when you're in that application, you can toggle into that action layer, and now you have tailored the functions and the buttons for that particular program that you're using. Kind of cool. I've done this on another template. Basically, it's this same config. It's actually exactly the same config, but there's an additional action layer for Davinci Resolve, which is my preferred video editor, and it has completely different functions. Maybe not completely. I mean, the mouse is still the mouse, triggers and all that are still the same, left mouse, right mouse, and all that. But the scroll wheel on the left touchpad is no longer emulating the scroll up and scroll down functions of a mouse, but they're emulating the left arrow and right arrow on a keyboard. That way I'm able to sort of jog through my footage, scrub through my footage by running my thumb in a circle around the wheel. It'd be kind of cool to show that off for any video editors out there who kind of want to see how to integrate this controller with their workflow. Not that it's a preferred workflow. My preferred workflow is using a Shuttle Pro on my right hand, a keyboard in front of me, and a Stream Deck XL on my left hand, with a ton of, custom things. For example, since we're talking about it, let me show you. So this is the Stream Deck layout for my live streaming, right? For OBS and also auto hotkey functions that are related to streaming. But I also have another profile right here. This is my Davinci Resolve layer. And we have Control, Alt, and Shift down here. And I sort of put my hands right here. And then I can do multiple functions per key. So one key will insert something, insert a selected clip when I press it. But then, you probably can't read it very well, but I changed the icons so that there's multiple boxes within the actual PNG, the blue, black, and then red outline. And the red outline means whatever function is named within that red box will fire when you hold Shift and hit that button. And whatever function is within the blue box in that button will fire when you hold Control and hit it. And whatever function is just within the black will fire when you press it. If there's a yellow box, like in here, or up here, or down here, or over here, then the yellow function will fire when you hold Alt. So a function like this has actually 4 different functions. And it's firing 4 different keyboard shortcuts depending on which of these modifiers I'm holding when I press that button. This is kind of similar in a sense to the Steam controller when you think about it, but a little bit more useful for these types of things. You wouldn't use this for like general navigation. I mean, I do have arrow keys here and stuff, but yeah, you could probably like configure your Stream Deck to do some pretty amazing stuff in terms of general Windows navigation. I haven't needed to ever do that, so I've not explored any of that. But the Stream Deck is really, really handy, especially for video editing. And again, it's one of those things where it just makes the process more fun. And you can't go wrong with more fun, especially these days. So that's Ryker's desktop config. The name here, 2007, is the year 2020. 07 is the month because, hey, it's the 1st of July, 2020. Welcome to July 2020. And that's that. So I hope I've been able to enlighten you with things. And I hope I did an adequate job of showing off the capabilities of Valve's amazing Steam controller. And man, I'm really hopeful that they're going to release a version 2 with a couple more grip buttons, and I can't wait to see how this config would evolve with a controller like that. And well, I mean, I can't wait to see how this config is going to evolve, considering I was so happy with the config that I had a few years ago. And I will get messages from random people, sometimes on Reddit or Discord, and they'll say, hey, I've been using your config and it's awesome. I love it. Do you have any updates? And I'm always kind of like bummed out because I do have updates, but I don't really have a concise way of presenting them. And I feel like just dumping a config on somebody and being like, hey, figure it out, is kind of, I don't know. It's kind of lame just because, as you can see, it's 7:43 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we've been talking about this for a long time. And I feel like that's necessary to kind of understand the thought process behind it. So I'm happy that we've done this. I'll probably clip this out and edit this as its own sort of standalone video. So any other crazy people that want to spend over an hour talking about one Steam controller config that has nothing to do with gaming, might find this handy and useful. I certainly would have found this very useful when I was building it way back when. There's not a lot of people talking about desktop configs because I don't think that it's very relevant, and I don't think there's a lot of people that are trying to navigate their desktop with a Steam controller. But as you know, the purpose of what I'm doing is not to be the most relevant to the most amount of people, but to hopefully provide, a nugget of gold for that one random guy who's out there climbing that one random mountain looking for something special. And hey, if that's you and you found this video and you're a Steam controller user and you're curious about setting up a desktop config, then by all means, give mine a try. And if you have any questions, hit me up on Discord, and I'd love to talk Steam controller with you. So we're going to take a break real quick, and we're going to come back for a little bit before the end of the show. Lloyd, Nemo, and all the rest of you watching, thanks for hanging out. Don't go anywhere, because we're not over yet. I'll see you guys in just a minute.